Hey y'all, I'm Bud Elliott, and this is Cover 3 College Football Summer School. We've done our research on the teams, and now we're bringing on the top team experts from the 24/7 Sports Network to help us fill in the blanks. Please follow us on Twitter at Cover 3 Podcast. That's Cover 3 Podcast. And leave us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. All right, class is in session. Hey guys, I'm Bud Elliott, and welcome back in to Cover 3 College Football Summer School Edition. And today, we're going to talk a little Pac-12 champs, Rose Bowl participants, and to do so, I'm going to bring on my friend Steve Bartle, who runs UteZone. Steve, welcome to Cover 3.
What's up, Bud? Hey, man, it's good to be back on here with you.
No, it is, man. You guys, you were dead on last year. Last year at Utah when we did the spring gleaning or round the clock series, whatever we ended up terming it last year. 10-4 season for Utah. Played as a pretty legitimate top 15 team, Rose Bowl appearance, one of the best games I've seen in quite some time from an entertainment standpoint. People in Utah got to be feeling pretty good right now.
No, absolutely, Bud. And I think the biggest reason for optimism is we don't have a quarterback battle, this season. And so that's been a big change for a lot of Utah fans this offseason. Coming off a Rose Bowl appearance, as you mentioned, a Pac-12 championship as well. Those were the Pac-12 championship was a big deal, for this Utah football program, this fan base. It's been, a process. This has been the goal since they joined the Pac-12, and to see them, get their first one after 10 years in the conference. It was a big milestone for Kyle Whittingham and the program. So the fan base is feeling good, the program is feeling good, and they're heading into the offseason with a rejuvenated, a higher level of confidence than we've seen in years past. So a lot of optimism surrounding this Utah football program right now.
All right, so fill in the blank. Last year, Utah's offense was better than its defense for the first time since when? Because I thought about that this morning when I was prepping for these, and it has been a minute, man.
Holy cow. Yeah, no, man, you would have to go back and really dive into some of those early 2000 teams, right? Like
Urban Meyer, Alex Smith.
Like that's what I'm thinking. Like there's probably a year between then and the 2010s where the offense was better, but I would have to do a deep dive. But off the top of my head, like you would have to go all the way back to that 2014 with Alex Smith leading the way, where the offense was just that much better than the defense. And even then, like last year's defense still ended up among the top in the Pac-12. So it really says something. But yeah, that offense last year it's been the best that we've seen in quite some time.
No doubt about it. Once Cam Rising was installed as the starter, I went back and looked at my numbers. I actually had them as a top 10 offense in the whole country with him in there. I mean, that's, obviously the Rose Bowl, everybody had DBs out across the board and whatnot. And it was a score fest. But even entering that game, I think they were playing as kind of a top 15 level offense. He's back. There's a lot to like back on this offense. Do you think he's going to take a leap this year, like another step, or can he maintain what he did even? That was pretty impressive.
Yeah, no, like it was really impressive to see him step in, and the difference was almost immediate, right? Like he stepped in the San Diego State game, and that was the craziest thing was how night and day different the offense looked with him in there compared to Charlie Brewer, who was the starter coming out of fall camp. It was just, his presence on the field made a big difference in so many ways. So, with the year under his belt, the success that he had, you look at the track record of offensive coordinator Andy Ludwig, his time at Vanderbilt. I think he finished there in 2018 with Kyle Shurmur. And you look at Shurmur's, progress and progression each year as a starter. He finished with his best season in 2018 under Andy Ludwig. And I think that's happened before with Andy Ludwig here at Utah. Brian Johnson, the last time, he was here, multiple year starter, finished in 2008 as a guy that orchestrated the offense, had full command of it. And I think that's kind of the thing that a lot of us are looking forward to with Cam Rising is him taking more control, more command of the offense. We got to see him a little bit this spring. Saw him in a scrimmage 2 weeks ago, saw him in the red and white game this past Saturday. And, he's making throws. He just looks like a guy that's playing at a very high confidence level, playing with command of the offense, and I think that's going to translate this fall. And he averaged 180 yards, something like that, per game through the air, which isn't a big number. And I don't think that we'll see him start throwing, for 250 yards per game. But I do think we'll see a jump. I think we'll see a significant jump for him where he's probably 220, 225, somewhere in there where it's a little bit more consistent. But I do expect Cam to take, a nice step forward this season.
So I got to ask you about this. Britton Covey, the success rate when they went to him was just absolutely ridiculous. He was kind of a cheat code. It was almost you remember that Clemson team? And I'm not doing this because they're both smaller white dudes, but like remember when Clemson had all those guys that were as tall as trees, and the way they beat Bama was basically like, hey, we got this guy on your safety or on your nickel, and he just really couldn't cover him with Hunter Renfrow. If I have a concern about this offense, and this is why we have the show, because I want to ask you, it's Covey was just sort of such a safety net there. When they needed something, they would just go to him and he would be open and he'd catch it. Like, he wasn't always an explosive play guy in the pass game. Like a return game, he was a stud. But how do they work around not having him?
So with Britton Covey, obviously it's a lot to replace. It's a lot to replicate. But I do think they have a couple guys in Brent, Heathy, and Makai Bernard who are similar in terms of their versatility. Right, Brent is labeled as a tight end, but he's got he worked exclusively with wide receiver coach Chad Bumpus and the wide receivers this spring. He's also played running back in high school. He's been utilized in the run game in his time at Utah as well. So he's got that kind of versatility. And then Makai Bernard is a similar athlete out of the running back room, and I think he also had experience playing receiver in high school, and he's going to be a guy that we see flexed into the slot, flexed out wide. He was the guy that, he had to play
corner in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
Okay.
Had the incredible catch, in the corner of the end zone. That was Makai Bernard. And I think he's going to be that guy to help replicate some of the production that leaves with Britton Covey moving on from the program finally.
Awesome. I love Tavion Thomas at the back. Not really a question there I need to ask about him because he's a stud, I think. Losing two guys who started quite a few snaps on the offensive line. I know last year you had some questions about this group when we spoke entering the season. It worked out okay. What are your thoughts here for this year?
Bud, this is going to be a group that there's quite a bit more confidence within this group, just considering the way that they turned things around after that first month, right? It was awful in that first month, and they talk about it, all of them. Jim Harding, the offensive line coach, the offensive lineman that played, they all talk about it, that they did not play well, but they turned it around. And I think, as you mentioned, the two guys that depart, Nick Ford at center, Bamidele Olaseni, the gigantic presence, 6'8", 330 pounds, 88-inch wingspan. Like, that's going to be tough to replace. You don't find a lot of guys like him, on the streets. So it's going to be tough. And the thing is, they've got a guy that really played well. Their top offensive lineman in many respects, Braden Daniels, who moved out to right tackle. He's made the switch to left tackle, which they're really optimistic about his ability there. They've got a lot of depth. And that was the biggest difference to me in watching this team in our time that we got to watch them this year, is just the amount of depth. How many guys are truly ready to play in a game? There's probably 8-9 guys ready to play. They've got a good idea of, who those guys are. And there's probably a good 5 or 6 that they feel really comfortable can start. But the depth, it has really improved from that 2019 team, where the offensive line was kind of the big bugaboo of that team. So I do think the depth has improved. They've got some options. They've got some depth, and some guys are emerging and stepping up.
All right, so I just got off with Ryan Abraham of USC Football, and they're obviously really excited about Lincoln Riley. And I asked him, I said, hey, do you think USC will need to score 40 a game in Pac-12 play? And do you think it can? And he said, I think they might have to, and I think that they probably can. Let's transition to the defensive side of the ball here for Utah, because there are some losses, at least on paper, that look pretty big, and I'd like you to kind of sort it out if you could for me. Which ones are more replaceable, and which ones do you feel like they might be in trouble with? Defensive linemen, Tafua and Tafana up front, or probably mispronounced that pretty badly. Devin Lloyd and Sewell, I'm guessing you're going to go here at linebacker. And then Davis and McKinney at DB. Those are some names. If you watch Utah games, those guys made plays, like a lot. Yeah. Where are they going to be okay and maybe better? Where do you project a drop off?
As crazy as it sounds, Bud, like when you lose, a projected first-round pick and an all-conference running mate at the other linebacker spot, it's a lot to replace, right? Whether it be talent, just simple ability, production, leadership. Those guys possessed all of it. And I think that's why you're seeing Devin Lloyd projected as high as he is. Like, he's the total package. That's going to be tough to replace. But as crazy as it sounds, there's a lot of optimism that they've got guys, in the pipe, coming down the pipe, that are going to be able to fill in. They're not going to be Devin Lloyd and Nephi Sewell. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But there's a confidence level that they're going to be able to come in and play at a level that is expected. And I think part of the reason they'll be able to meet expectations is other guys around them kind of stepping up and emerging. Clark Phillips is a guy that Utah's going to lean on and rely on to make plays. But I do think there's confidence in true freshman, early enrollee, legacy kid, younger brother of two former players, Jackson Barton, Cody Barton, almost 5-star according to 24/7 Sports. Lander Barton, the local product here out of Brighton, he's come in and, man, the talk surrounding him has been really impressive. So he's going to be a guy to keep in mind, as we're talking about impact freshmen. Lander Barton is certainly going to be a guy to keep an eye on. And then another guy who we didn't get to see, Mahmoud Diabate, the transfer out of Florida. There's a lot of optimism around him and what he brings to the table, to that linebacker room. They've got other guys, Kareni Reed, who's really stepped up. So they feel good at linebacker. And they feel good at safety, right? You lose Vontae Davis and Brandon McKinney. They feel good about safety. They've got a guy in Cole Bishop that really flashed some in moments last year. I think, honestly, the biggest question mark, and it's crazy because of just how well they reload year in and year out on the defensive line. I think the biggest question mark of those three position groups is who steps up and who actually, fills in that starting defensive end spot vacated by Mika Tafua. There's some guys, there's some bodies, but who actually emerges as the guy will be certainly something to monitor as we get into the summer and fall camp.
I do feel like Utah always has a dude that is just sort of off the national radar, like even more so than just Utah as a team is. And then all of a sudden he steps up. It's like, oh, he's a 12-sack guy. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what it is, right? Like, you don't know who it's going to be some years, but you can always count on somebody, stepping up and being a guy that gets pressure. I think Van Fillinger, former 4-star kid, here locally, is a guy that we're all kind of expecting to make that leap. He had 5.5 sacks last year, complimenting Mika Tafua on the other side. So I think there's some expectations for him to kind of step up and being one of those guys, one of those leaders. So we'll see.
Sure. It'll be really interesting to see Whittingham, continue to, and his staff obviously handle this defense with a lead most of the time. That's not always something that they've always had. Two more and I'll get you out of here. Again, we're talking to Steve Bartle of UteZone. Does a great job covering all things Utah and was on this Utah team as a team that certainly could win the Pac-12 last year, and they may be the favorite for it this year, and depending on what you think of Oregon and SC and whatnot. Last year, punt team was not very good. Like that.
No.
And to me, that kind of was an under the radar thing. Have they figured out something different at punter this year or punt team?
Well, no.
Okay. All right.
To Coach Witt, it's still a work in progress, according to Coach Witt. They've got a couple guys that they feel better about. Cameron Peasley is one of those pro kick Australia guys. They brought in a transfer, Mike Williams, who's, he's got a bigger leg, just not as accurate, whereas Peasley is more of the pitch and wedge type guy. He can place it, pin it down in the corner, but he doesn't have a big leg. So it's an interesting dynamic. You got a power guy and more of an accurate guy. They could find a nice mixture between the two. And also, I think part of the struggles of the punt team weren't necessarily the punters themselves, but the protection, the snap, all of it is kind of a work in progress right now. And it's still a bit of a question mark as we head into the summer. And that's kind of scary because it did, ultimately cost them 2 games.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And they weren't just little misses. They were big time, kind of special teams disasters. All right. So last one here. Portal hunting over the summer. I assume Utah has a spot or two left.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Where are they going in an ideal world? Not necessarily like guys that they're going to get, but like positions that they want to try to add depth to, or perhaps add starters to with those final few scholarships through the portal.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. And they do have spots, and part of that is they're anticipating guys leaving the program. And so a lot of where they expected to be aggressive in the transfer portal is dependent upon who leaves the program, kind of the departures and what positions are impacted most. But as of right now, I think you look at this roster, you've got a guy emerging in Devon Bailey at wide receiver. And in a lot of ways, like he's kind of the perfect wide receiver, a former walk-on, under-recruited, but just tremendous athleticism. I still think ideally, right, in an ideal world for Utah, you're able to add a complement to him, a proven commodity of sorts at wide receiver. And then defensively, with Clark Phillips, you've got a dude at cornerback, a guy that's proven to make plays on a big stage. There's a lot of confidence with him. But the depth, just considering some of the injuries that were suffered last season, cornerback is also a position that could see a few additions this summer. So and obviously with what's going on around the rest of the Pac-12, where you've got Lincoln Riley coming to USC, you've got Oregon and what they're building, you need as much depth at that cornerback position, enough guys to compete, to drive up the competition at that spot as you can possibly get. So it's one of those premium positions, similar to wide receiver. And I think Utah, as of right now, just looking at the roster, I think those are two positions to keep an eye on for Utah. They will be aggressive and will look to fill the spots vacated, however many leave. But they will certainly take full advantage of the transfer portal and what comes of it this summer.
Awesome. Steve Bartle of UteZone, covering a Utah team that very well could be favored in all 12 games this year. It's going to be really exciting to watch these guys as they try to defend their Pac-12 title, and we'll be staying tuned to Steve and UteZone all summer. Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you, bud.
All right, that's the bell. Cover 3 College Football Summer School is over for today, but don't worry. We'll be back soon with even more episodes filling you in on the top teams in college football. Please give us those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on YouTube and on Twitter at Cover 3 Podcast. And we'll see y'all soon.